Hello, this is Nate Clark of Nate Clark Knives. Thank you for tuning in to Bladeology podcast.
All right, we're going to jump into it like we do every week. Welcome to another episode of the Bladeology podcast. We are on this week with episode 42, and it's going to be a good one. We've got a guest on. This is the vocal representation of Jeremiah Burbank from PVK Vegas.
Nick Chuperin of NCC Knives.
And we're on with Brian Biegler of Biegler Bladeworks. Brian, how you doing tonight?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good. I'm psyched you could take some time and jump on with us. Talk about knives.
Yeah, for sure.
So how did we get here? What brought us to this moment in this reality? How did you get into knives and knife making?
So I started knife making for me started out of a martial arts base, right? So I was in Filipino martial art, Ishikawa to be specific, and I had this training partner for a long time, a guy named Ishikawa, and we've been training for a while, years together. And Ken was an artist by trade. He works with ad firms and does some pretty high end art stuff for advertising firms, and the way that Ken could express his outside of, he was kind of my I would call my teacher, I guess. The way he could express his art and then also make it connect with blades was he started designing his own knives, and he was having them made by a custom knife maker in Georgia at the time. This is 2004, 2005. And he'd been doing this for 2000, kind of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And really how it started is I was like, well, that's really cool. I've been training for a long time. And the idea was this, essentially. If you were doing Filipino martial arts, there wasn't a lot of stuff out there for a guy who was ready to say, okay, I want blades that work for the martial art that I'm doing. If you compared it back in those days to what was available for like Japanese stylists, meaning kind of the Bugei Trading Company kind of stuff, and you could buy all kinds of katana and whatnot for Iaido and stuff like this. And there wasn't a lot out there except for Chris Cutlery, I believe, for Filipino enthusiasts. So Ken started designing his own stuff, and the only way he could have his kind of concepts realized into real life was to have somebody make them. And so he's having this dude make them in Georgia. Okay, so we're training, and I hit this point in my life, which was when I started this master's program in biomedical science stuff, molecular biology. And it just so happens that I had, the way that the courses went over the course of these 3 or 4 semesters, I ended up with enough free time on my hand because of the way the courses stacked. And I was interested in getting some done. And I had like 1 or 2 customs made by this guy. And then I kind of got a set from a Spotty Daga set from the guy. And I was like, these aren't really great. You know, I like to make stuff. So I was like, screw it. I'm going to try and do it myself. That's really the gist of it. And that's how we started, which is a bit of a funny start. But I don't know. It's just where my head was at the time. So he had a bunch of designs he was having made, and I knew he was buying a couple customs a month at the time. Okay, this is a flashback of that time period. So he's buying a couple customs a month at this time, fixed blades. And so I went to Lowe's and got a $100 Delta 1x42 grinder and a Delta $100 drill press, and like an angle grinder and a chop saw and a bunch of sandpaper. And then I just literally got on the internet. This is back in the days before Facebook, of course. And I got on the forums, like, I don't know, it wasn't Blade Forums, but it was one of the other ones that Jerry Hossam moderated, the new Knifemaker room. And so I started kind of just flying through all the forum boards, trying to figure out how to make a knife, basically. And then just kind of dove right into it. And I remember the first day, I told Ken, I was like, you're buying all these knives and you have cool designs. I want to try and make these. So I can tell you that first month, I found at the time I was living in Fort Worth, Texas. And I found an auto shop that was selling 5160. They were doing, I don't know, some kind of leaf spring work or whatever. And I got some 5160. I'll never forget this. I got some 5160 from that shop because I saw on the forums that 5160 was a knife steel you could use. And I got it from that shop and then cut it up and just essentially just threw it on that 1x42 grinder and started trying to make a knife. It was really just by the seat of my pants at that point, and that's how it started.
Wow. All right. So you just kind of went for it.
I totally went for it, and went for it hard. I really enjoyed it, and I was the thing I had at the time was time, and so because I was at the tail end of this master's program thing. And so I was financially supported enough to where I could handle whatever the course load stuff was. Within 6 months, I was essentially had a grinder, a drill press, and then I even figured out how to construct a backyard kind of forge made out of a turkey fryer pot and refractory cement that I jetted air into it with hair dryers. And I even heat treated my own stuff there because it was all tool steel in the backyard. I mean, it was really a funny experience. And then we'd try and do the heat treat there, and of course it was just kind of chaos. And then every time I was quenching in transmission oil, I think at the time. And then it started massive fire, and then we'd kind of throw dirt on it. I've got pictures of this. And then every time I would actually do a heat treat, we'd cook, we'd kind of grill like beer butt chickens or something like that. Yeah. It was really fun. And I was literally heat treating my first blades with sticks and wood that I picked up off the ground in the backyard of this rent house I was living with in Fort Worth, Texas, of all places. And that's really the beginnings of it. And I can't believe that it's led us to this podcast.
So you're heat treating blades, but essentially you're cooking dinner as well. It's
both,
dual purpose.
Well, I figured if I was going to do all that work, I might as well get some food out of it, right?
Sure.
Hey, I don't blame you. I feel every knife maker's done that at one point. I was trying when I first got my heat treat oven. I was like, well, what happens to a steak at 2,000 degrees?
You get a great sear, right?
Wow. So I didn't know that. So you were doing a master's program. So you have your master's degree, yeah?
Actually, I have a good PhD now. But.
Wow. Okay. All right. Okay. So you're a knife maker. Does any of that school knowledge come into play in your knife making career at all?
Absolutely none of it.
Okay, good. Okay.
That's I have a lot of former lives. In this podcast, I don't know how many hours we have, but I could tell you about 3 or 4 former lives I've done. I've kind of a jack of all trades. I've bounced around quite a bit.
Okay. All right.
That's the start of the knife making. That's really where it originated right there.
That's the knife making. Okay, so the knife making is born out of, and I know that you still, because I follow you on Instagram, I've talked to you about this before, but you still actively train. I mean, you were saying you were at the gym earlier. I figured you're doing martial arts.
Yeah, that's the cool thing. I've got this shop here in Dallas, and it's about a 7,000 square foot building, and I'd say solidly a half of it is storage for classic cars, and we've got lifts and we've got cars in here, and then my knife shop occupies like a quarter of it, and then a quarter of it's a gym, and then a quarter of it is we have an office, like this is my dad's office, and he's retired, he's 75, but he still does a little bit of his old job in the energy industry. So we got a really great facility here. So I literally have a shop full of muscle cars, knife shop, and Muay Thai gym.
So the gym is in the same facility.
It's
Dude, that's legit.
I come right off the knife shop and walk through the door, and I coach guys within 3 minutes. I mean, I literally stroll right in, and I'm on the floor with fighters. Yeah, it's a really cool scene, honestly.
Okay, all right. So you're not. I have a feeling that this is an underlying thing with your previous lives, but I mean, so you're handling, like, would you consider yourself a full-time knife maker? Is that
100%.
So you're full-time knife making.
100%.
You're teaching Muay Thai.
Yeah, I teach the gym time I spend in the week is about I'd say 10 hours of coaching a week.
Wow. Okay.
I run full time on the floor, holding pads and coaching fighters, in about 4, maybe 5, and that's my teaching, my personal workouts too included. You got like 10 to 12 hours of that. That's the stuff I've been doing for a long time, 28 years now, I guess. I just was lucky enough to be able to wrap all the things that I'm really passionate about into one life and then one space. It's great. Yeah,
so okay, so you're saying fighters, so I'm assuming these are not beginners. These are like
no, I take beginners too, of course, but I mean I have everyone from pro to beginner.
Okay.
I mean, like today I'm teaching a guy that I just started 6 months ago, and I had him on the floor with a guy that I've coached in pro fights. So that's normal for a gym, for a fight gym.
Okay. Wow. And so this is all the same discipline, or this is like mixed?
It's not the same discipline. No, the knife stuff is not related to. I do a couple different martial arts, but right now I only coach that one.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then later in the podcast we can talk about the whole Thailand segment of it and all that stuff. But yeah, it's Thai boxing.
Thai boxing. Okay. All right. Wow. Okay, so we went back and forth a little bit, and then so we've got the knife shop, we've got the gym, and then we've got a classic muscle car.
It's just that's just a kind of a. I mean, obviously it's just a passion between. It's a family thing. One of my uncles is kind of a big gearhead, and then my dad kind of got into it too, to do stuff with his brother, and I've always been into classic cars, and so we have a kind of a decent amount of, or actually a really good amount of classic cars as well.
Wow. Okay, so it's not like you're not running like a hot rod shop. So we're not building them. No. Okay. No,
God, I couldn't do both.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, if you're handling 3 of those businesses at the same time,
I'm handling 2 businesses. I would like to branch out into doing something involving classic cars in the future, but that's a really well covered industry, and I have because I have the means to do it. It would be interesting to look into it, but
all right,
there's a lot of guys that do that stuff.
Yeah, I think about that all the time. Just because you can doesn't mean you shouldn't. It doesn't mean you should.
It's a really, I can tell you, it seems like that industry's, I don't want to say booming, but man, if you ever have a car and you're trying to get it worked on, all the shops say they're just blasted out with business. So
yeah,
I mean, it's just where they are in that industry right now. It's kind of crazy that it's doing so well.
That's far out.
I got a car I'm trying to get into a shop right now, and it's a 4 or 5 month waiting list.
So wait, what's your daily driver in Texas? What are you driving?
My daily driver, not that I have to drive that much because I'm all self-contained here, but I don't know. I don't even remember. I think it's an 06 Honda.
Oh,
and it's like I drive that about.
Okay.
No. Well, I drive that about once a week, and when I go out after 5 or 6 or 7 o'clock, it's always right now it's a 70 Chevelle that's LS swapped.
Oh, okay. There we go. Okay. All right. Chevelle's legit. Okay.
No, I got a 70 Chevelle. It's LS swapped because my personal car from the old days is a 64 Riviera, but it's kind of been turned into a show car, so I don't drive it. And then but the next car is a 69 Camaro. So.
Fancy guy. All right. Okay, that makes sense. After the sun goes down, the dancing shoes come on.
The Chevelle comes out, yeah, and then I'm just racing around.
So do you guys share those vehicles, or like you guys just share the space and have your own vehicles?
Oh, no, it's my dad and my uncle, so I drive any of them I want, honestly.
There you go.
Really, at some point in my life, I'd like to build a '67 Mustang.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
I
get
wish the
around to it, Nick.
66 had a similar body, but unfortunately, it doesn't.
I could talk about cars all day for sure. For sure, we have a lot of cars in this family.
Damn. All right, so at what point? We'll dial it back a little. So you're heat treating and setting fires in the in the back
in the
and
backyard.
You're making beer chicken.
That's right.
Where's the transition from there to where we are now? How did it get?
This is a very long story.
How did the chicken get from the fire to the oven?
How did the chicken get there? What
this
was
is a
the
very long story?
Well,
we're gonna drift a little bit. We're gonna have to drift out of Knifemaker to get through this.
It's never straight.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm in Fort Worth, Texas, and things did not work out after that master's program thing with me continuing to be at this university. And this is going to sound crazy. They had posted a thing in the university I don't know, website or newspaper or whatever. They said we're doing a full student transfer operation with a university called Naresuan University in Pitsanulok, Thailand, in the middle of Thailand. And so things weren't, let's just say they weren't working out for me. I mean, I completed the master's and I did well, but I was like, the long story, I ended up coming to the guys and said, hey, you guys are doing this transfer. I'd like to complete the transfer. You said you were going to take Thai students and you're going to send us over. It says, I'll go over to Thailand. And they looked at me like, what the fuck? They looked at me like, no way. There's nobody that actually is serious about this. And it turned out to be kind of a complete sham. They were just doing it for the money. And the end of the head of this whole operation looks at me and he says, well, here's the phone number of our contact in Pitsanulok, Thailand. So they essentially left me, I don't know, kind of no option. They're just like, call this guy. So here you go. So without going into the details, of all that, it was like the world. I'd wanted to expat for a long time and move over. So I go over there to check out the Naresuan University in Pitsanulok. And it's smack in the middle of Thailand. It'd be like going to university in Waco, Texas of Thailand. It's smack in the middle of the rice growing central plains. It's covered in mosquitoes and I didn't speak Thai at the time and there was no English anywhere and I couldn't get a house, and I couldn't find I couldn't go to like 24-hour fitness or anything like that. But I flew over there, landed at the airport. I got picked up, brought to the university, and I stayed in that town for a week or so. And it's probably it's the last time I've ever been to that town. And we talked about it, and I looked around at their facilities and stuff. And I had already, a little backtracking, before even this part of the conversation, I'd already had a job at a Biegler Institute of Immunology Research as a tech, and then I had a job at UT Southwestern, which is this massive research university and med school here in Dallas, Texas. And I did some solid research, and actually I'd already published a paper in a U.S. journal about multiple sclerosis as it relates to T-cell immunology. So I get there and I'm looking around at the stuff and I'm like, there's no way I can do research. So I'm getting there. I got no help I cut my ties with the University of Fort Worth and vowed never to go back again to that town because I hated it. But I'm sitting in Thailand in Bangkok at this time. And I'm like, well, shit, if they can, try and if they were really, there's really no structure to this transfer of students, I'm like, screw it, I'll just do it myself. And so I contacted the biggest medical research science and med school university in Bangkok. It's called Mahidol. And then the other one was Chiang Mai University up in the north. And then I literally just sat in Bangkok, tried out Mahidol, and then they never contacted me back. So I flew up to Chiang Mai, and I called them, and because you can't do anything in Thailand especially this time. This is 2005, I guess. You can't do anything by email. It's not like we email back and forth. I had to fly up there and call them, and they said, sure, come by. And I went and talked to them. They said, yeah, we'd love to have an international student in the science department. And basically, at the end of this, they treated me more like a human than I've ever been treated in any university I've ever been in. They were like, yeah, we'd love to have you. And that's kind of how I ended up there. And I went on an interview and talked to them about it. And they said, yes, we'll accept you in the PhD program. And I got to lay out the terms, meaning I had already taken all the coursework for a PhD in the United States because I did it at the university and the med school in Fort Worth. So I said, look, I don't want to do the coursework. I just want to do the thesis and the PhD finally and publish again. And they said, yeah, sure, great. And I believe I'm the first one who's ever done it at that university in sciences. So,
damn,
that's how I ended up in Chiang Mai. And so that was 2006. So I moved to Thailand in 2006.
So you moved there, like you went there, you figured this out, and then you got yourself situated. How long were you in Thailand for?
The moving there part was cool because in that entire story I just told you, where I went to Thailand and looked at all these universities, it took about a month or so. And my girlfriend at the time, who became my wife, who you've met before, she was back in Texas, and then I sent her a ticket and she flew over. This is a funny story, actually. If this isn't the world telling you what to do, I don't know what is. She flew over, okay, and we're in this rent house, right? It's this little 1940s tract house in Fort Worth, Texas, that was built around World War II. Just a little $800 rent house, right? While we were gone, the fitting on it was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. The fitting on the back of the toilet, PVC fitting on the back of the toilet, cracked and ruptured completely. And so the high pressure line that goes into the toilet started spewing water, and it spewed water for 28 days in July in Texas. Okay, with all the air off. This is a funny story. So I go over there and do everything I just told you I was doing, and then we're like, okay, we got to go back to Texas and sort it out. We're gonna pack up all our shit, and we're gonna move. I'm moving to Thailand. I told her that before we even met. I said I think I'm gonna move to Thailand. So we get back to Texas, and because I had sent her a ticket and it was a different flight, she got back about 6 hours before me, 8 hours before me. Can't remember. And then I get back to the States, right? And I turn on my phone, and I just got my phone is just blown up, right? And when she got to the house, she couldn't open the door, okay? And it's an old pier and beam rent house, right? The floorboards had curled up so much that water had been running for 28 days, and the whole house was fucking destroyed. There was mold up to the top of crawled all the way up the walls, all the way to the top of the ceiling. Every sofa, obviously all my furniture, anything that was even natural materials, wood or anything, was covered in mold. And it was she said the rug looked like a polar bear rug.
Oh my God.
It was mold. And so I got there. You imagine you come back from this long trip, yeah?
I just want to relax.
Yeah, I just want to go. I'm just going to finally sleep in my own bed, unpack my suitcase. And then I get home, and we immediately had to go stay in a Motel 6 and then start cleaning out everything. And I was like, if this isn't the universe saying, hey, Brian, you've somehow ended up on the right path. I literally just threw everything I owned down on the fucking front lawn. And at the end of all this whole story, I packed up 2 suitcases, and she did as well. Your maximum for international travel, which I think is 100 pounds, 2 50-pound suitcases. And that was everything everything else I just got rid of. Was it.
Shit,
and I left the country in 2006 with 2 suitcases. And that's the start of that journey.
Wow.
Everything else was ruined.
Yeah. Screw it.
Everything, every sofa, everything I had amassed, except for a couple swords.
There you go.
There you go.
Did you take swords with you?
Time to do that.
Yeah.
I stored them, so I gave them to a friend to hold for me until I got back to the States.
I mean, sometimes it just works out, and
it's crazy, man. It's crazy how that worked out.
That's it.
And that started that adventure. So we can go further and delve into the Thailand trip of it. But as far as knife making goes, I lived there and did a lot of great stuff, and there's an immense amount of stories from that. But as far as it relates to knife making, then I would return to the United States once a year about Christmas time to see my mom at Christmas, and so I would stay for 6 weeks to a month in the United States, and then I would come back here to Texas, and I had set up a temporary knife shop at my father's ranch, which was about an hour and a half south of Dallas. And then I would come back here and like crank out some knives. And just crazy enough, I was able to kind of keep the knife making going while living overseas. I would come here and stay and then crank out enough knives that really paid for the trip back to the States, and then go back to Thailand and come back and do it again.
Okay. So now at that time when you were doing this sort of regiment, who were the knives that were all orders, or they were to dealers, or?
All right. So, in those days, it was no dealers at all. It was just through martial arts contacts. So back in those days, I was just making fixed blades, and it was just through. At that time, I have a network of people that I knew through the martial art I was doing, and I was producing blades that were good for those guys. I mean, it worked for that martial art. But going back to what I said earlier, there was other than Chris Cutlery, kind of, and maybe Jerry Hossam, there wasn't guys making a lot of knives that were really pointed at Filipino stylists in martial arts at the time. If you were a Japanese stylist, then there's tons of stuff you can get in swords and whatnot. And so it was just kind of word of mouth through people in the organization, and then around those years, I was kind of tapped into the Paquita Tercio Global Organization and this and that, but without going into knowing what that is. It just means it's a martial arts organization that had teachers, gurus, or whatever you want to call them, all over the United States and even some in overseas. And they started to figure out that I was making cool stuff, and it was just selling enough. I mean, I could make and sell enough knives to pay for my trip back to the United States before I went back to Thailand, because I couldn't make knives in Thailand. One, I couldn't get the equipment over. Two, it's actually illegal on their visa. You're not supposed to make knives. Anyway, it's a visa thing. But that carried it through all those years, and not only did it carry it, it actually grew, which is pretty cool.
So just hyper special. I mean, like anytime you're catering to like something like that, I can see that totally being word of mouth, like no problem. I mean, there's nobody else doing it. You're the guy. That's it.
It works not only because of that, it's because I had been doing it for a long time, and so I had, I guess you want to call it seniority in the organization, although I'm not officially ranked. It's not like a formal structure or anything. I've been doing it for a long time, and so I knew the right guys to know, and I was on the level of everyone's teacher, so all I have to, if the instructors are your contemporaries, then they're like, wow, your knives are perfect for what we do. And this really actually brings us to the next topic, is that the whole thrust of the knife making that I was doing was that there wasn't anybody that was a practitioner first and a maker second. Meaning I knew exactly, and this also comes from my friend Ken, who was my training partner and teacher, and also a great knife designer. Honestly, we both understood how the knife should be balanced and how it should be used in the terms of the martial art, and that's a great advantage to if a guy who's just a knife maker and he hasn't been training for 12, probably 15 years at that time, to understand how the blades should be used in the use of in Paquita and Kali. So I had an inside, it was like a guy who did it and then started making knives, as opposed to a guy who just supplied knives to guys who did it. And so everybody loved what I was making. Basically, the knives are balanced. I'm a real freak about knife balance, and then kind of all the other stuff. We can go, the details of how they should be used.
So, okay, so what portion of your current knife making still involves any of these fixed blades that you used to do?
Oh, percentage, probably about 30-40% of it.
Oh, okay. So I mean, it's still definitely a thing that you're
100%.
fully doing. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's edgy. Like once in a while, it goes some battle songs, and it's like, oh, I made these swords. And I'm like, oh, you
Yeah.
still make swords. Cool.
Yeah. Still make swords. Yeah. Yeah. We'll get to the belly songs, I guess, in a bit, but that's how it carried along for all the years that I lived overseas. I carried along just doing that, and that was all ended up being in the barn at the ranch, and I made a whole lot of knives there. So at that time, I had upgraded from the backyard forge, obviously, to a KMG grinder and a real even heat treat oven, and I had a little better tools, not much, but at least I had a good grinder and a good oven. And then I was just still pounding them out, grinding them every single knife. I figured out how to do a little CAD just for water jet, which helped a lot. Then I could pound them out, and I hand ground tons of fixed blades, and they all sold. Once I got a really good connection with a guy who was like the head of the system, we kind of collaborated. I said, I went to the head of the whole head of the whole system. I said, hey, what would you want in a fixed blade knife, a concealed carry fixed blade knife? Give me your laundry list. And he said, 4-inch, 4.5-inch at most. And that was about it, really, honestly. And then I threw some designs at him, and he was like, okay, I don't like that. And then I started drawing, and I made about 4 or 5 prototypes. And we kind of tweaked the dimensions and stuff. And this is all real technical as for this system, how it fits in your hand. It's got to be multi-grip, in Kali, they say, like sock and pakal and all that. And all the contact points in your hand got to be right. And the knife was like, honestly, a hit. I've sold a lot of them, honestly. And it's always to guys within the organization. So that was my angle, honestly.
Okay. That sounds like an excellent, that's probably the way to do it. I would imagine.
It's almost vertically integrated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Organization. Like I was in the organization. I started making knives, and then we kind of said, what do we need for knives? And if once kind of they had a guy internal to the organization, and then I knew we used to have these big instructor conferences in Dallas. There were 65 instructors from all over the United States. So once you got them on board, then you see what I mean. It was vertically integrated, and it was a good product too. I mean, it was a knife that fit everybody's needs.
So you're going between Kali, the terminology. I'm a little interested in if it's possible to describe to us who I don't know anything about martial arts.
Okay.
I know that it exists, but I do not know the ins and outs of the differentiation between one and the other. So,
all right. So Kali is
Kali. Yeah, go for it.
That's the martial arts of the Philippines. So in the Philippines, and Indonesia, martial arts systems are based on weapons, and so the fundamental tool of martial arts in the Philippines and Indonesia is a blade, is a knife, or a kind of for lack of a better term, let's just say a machete length sword, a one-handed sword or knife, and that's the basis. So when you see Kali, everyone says, "Oh, eskrima" and stuff like that, and they used to seeing people smashing sticks. They go, "Oh, those are Kali sticks," which is a rattan stick that's 28 inches long, but the stick is just a training tool for the sword. And so in Kali, God, I don't want to start sounding like Doug Marcaida, so slide against Doug Marcaida. But the Kali stick is a training tool for the sword, and in Kali you learn to use the stick first, the long weapon first, and then you go to the short weapon, which is the knife, and then you go to the empty hand. And the whole philosophy behind that was that in places like the Philippines and Indonesia, where they were still fighting Japanese or imperialists in the turn of the 1900s or whatever, if you're really going to fight people, you're going to use a weapon, not your empty hands. And it wasn't a personal development program like yoga or anything. They were actually fighting. So they would use the tools that they had, and the tools that they had, there's a tremendous amount of interesting blade history and culture in Indonesia and the Philippines. Okay, so the martial arts of the Philippines are typically called Kali, and then Indonesia would be Silat, and so people that practice Kali, probably a lot of people practice with the sticks, but the stick is just a training tool for the sword. And then the sword is easier to use than a knife because your timing has to be perfect and the spacing has to be perfect. Because a sword, the Kali stick or the sword is 28 inches long, and a knife is a knife. It's 5 inches long. So you kind of work backwards, I guess, meaning the long weapon, the knife, and then empty hand if you had to use empty hands, but you would absolutely prefer to use the long weapon or knife. Okay, so take it to the modern day. Not many of us can run around wearing a sword of any length. So knife fighting is a big part of it's kind of, it's a big part of it, yeah. So that's the martial arts of the Philippines, experts in using the blade, as they would say. And to a lesser extent, Salat, but I would say the Philippines is the best martial arts systems when it comes to knowing how to use a knife. 4 or 5 inch blade, 6. That's how those break down. It's the Southeast Asian martial arts.
Okay, so that actually makes a lot of sense. So it's weapons based, being a blade.
It is weapons based,
and that's okay. Yeah, because
absolutely weapons based.
That makes sense.
And if you ever, and then later, if you ever live over there, you'll see why. If you ever
okay.
Well, I just mean you can't sneak a gun over there or anything. So
right.
You gotta use what you got.
Yeah, it's a non-firearms based. Yeah, right.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah,
I'd like to go there at some point.
Okay.
At some point, I want to make my rounds around Asia. So
yeah, it'll be right after the COVID break. It'll be a good time to do it, probably.
Yeah, I was supposed to go to Japan at the end of this year, but that ain't happening probably, most likely. So I have to postpone that.
Yeah, sure.
So that definitely makes sense with the development. And so, I mean, that's what, when you're saying that, so you've been practicing that for how long? 26 years? What did you say?
Yeah, about 28 years, I think. I started about 92, 93.
Okay. So, I mean, you're entrenched in the scene, and that makes sense with the whole prototyping and the top down.
That's
so,
that's how it started. That's really where,
that's
my root.
Wow.
Of how I got into knife making. It was from that. It wasn't just, I like knives, I want to make them. I mean, I always obviously like knives. I mean, come on, but
right.
it was a purpose driven thing,
I got you.
Because it was like me and my buddy Ken. We were sitting around, on the sofa in the garage, going, "Shit, man, there's no knives that are exactly what we want for Kali." And then he actually started. He's like, "I'm gonna have some made," and he started having them made, and then eventually I was like, "Shit, I'm gonna start making them."
I mean, that's a logical no. I mean, that's totally, you see a hole in the market, whatever market that is,
right,
and you're like,
right,
I mean, let's take care of that.
And that's how we tracked along for a long time. And then, so back and forth from Thailand, being a scientist and stuff, I finished the PhD and then come back to the States. So the whole time I was training and having a great time and having loads and loads and loads of adventures in Thailand, which we could talk about forever. But as it relates to knife making, I got back to the States, and I moved back to the States because I couldn't find a scientist job in Thailand or in Singapore or in Japan. I thought about going to Japan. I didn't want to start over in Japan. So come back to the States. And long story short, I ended up running the ranch. So,
okay.
Because the whole time I was gone overseas for about 7 years, and my dad's ranch had started to get into a bit of disarray, and people were kind of screwing him over. And, you notice how he didn't have good people he could rely on and stuff. And I got back there, and the place was a bit in shambles. And I said, okay, I'll help you out down here. And then I did that a couple weeks, and I said, holy shit, man. I said, this is a full-time job. So you got to,
This is
yeah. I started out real altruistic, and then after a couple weeks, I was like, wow, this is not, I mean, it's like all day, every day work. I said, how about we just work something out? So I ended up down there, and I was running the ranch during the day and making knives at night. And that's how I got back to the States.
That's in Dallas, right? You're in Dallas. You're running the ranch. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking like cattle ranching or what?
Yeah. We have a run head of cattle there. I mean, we're enough.
Wow.
I think we're up to like 50 head. So you got 50 head of cattle. You can sell roughly 50 calves a year. So it's quite a bit. It's enough. I mean, it pays the bills.
I have again. Sure, I'm gonna just
No
go with
idea about this topic.
Exactly.
Say yes.
No, cattling is not. Yeah. If Brian, if you say so, I trust you. Absolutely.
I didn't. Hey, it's not. I didn't even have a background in it. There was like you said, there was a niche, there was a hole.
Right. Exactly.
It's kind of like. I mean, I didn't even begin to tell you before all this started that I was a musician or anything. I'm just kind of I was like, oh, there's a need here. Oh, fuck it, I'll do it. I'm just I'll figure it out and do it. And that's kind of everywhere I've went. I'm like, oh, okay, fuck it. I guess here we are. Let's just do this.
Life skill number 142.
Right. Let me do some reading. I'll get back with you in 2 weeks.
So you get back from Thailand. You're an official scientist. You're in like a
Right.
lab coat. You're armed with machetes and 20 years of collie experience. And then you're like, you know what? I'll just jump on this horse and we'll cowboy this shit out and call it.
Yeah, basically.
Wow.
That's pretty much it.
Okay. That's yeah. Okay. All right. So you're back. You're taking care of the ranch.
Mm-hmm.
You're okay. So you're making knives at the ranch while doing the cattling
in the barn, yeah, at night, yeah.
And then where are we from there? Wow.
They banged that out for a couple of years, and that was really nice. I mean, it's either really nice or really lonely. I mean, it's a lot of space to fill up with one person. So a couple years. On the one hand, it can be maddening being out in the middle of nowhere by yourself. I mean, I would lock the gate sometimes and not reopen that gate for 5 days. You're literally just living out in the country by myself, and that can be a little bit maddening. And then that got to be a couple of years of that. And my whole philosophy in life is, if you do anything for 3 years, you got to say, look, I'm either going to go ahead and plan on doing this possibly forever, or I got to switch, so I did it for long enough to where I was like, I don't want to keep doing this forever. So that really brings us to the crux to how we got here was the jumping off point. And here's every knife maker knows this point. So this one will ring true for any knife makers is, okay, do I go full retard or do I get another job? Because I'm doing enough business a year to, a little, enough money a year to be like, okay, it's kind of partially an income. Every part-time maker who's really kind of busting his balls at the end of the day or at night is doing this. He's like, it's partially an income. I have an audience. I didn't just like making hunting knives and I was making them in the garage. I had plans and I had connections and, like I said, I tried to make it an organization where I could figure out how ways to sell them. But then I realized I couldn't stay at the ranch forever. So then it was
better than me. I just went full retard. I didn't even go part-time. I went full time before I even sold the knife. I came home from college one day and I was like, Mom, I'm moving out next week.
Brilliant.
I have a shop lined up in the apartment. I'm going to go try to make knives for a year.
You're not the only one, man. I know other guys that did the same.
7 years later, I'm still kind of making knives.
Still on it.
7 years of agony.
Good life decisions.
7 years of agony and lack of sleep.
So I just kind of angled things to where they worked out. And obviously I went full retard. So here we are.
Wow. All right. So at that point when you're making this the cruciality of the situation is crushing down. Were you aware of the knife market as you know it now? Like were you aware of custom knives? Okay.
I was.
So you had
I did my research.
Yeah. Oh, you did? Okay.
No, but I mean, not only was I already, I wouldn't say selling any kind of a lot of knives, but I was selling enough to where I was constantly busy. I think when I was pumping out fixed blades full time, I could in a good month just flat out grinding. Not a lot of knives, but 12 knives a month or I don't know, something like that. And they were selling, so I was just kind of chugging along, just thinking about it. I have knife maker friends through martial arts connections and stuff, and I'd picked their brains. and just lucky enough. Again, it's just networking. There were a couple other knife makers that liked my stuff from the old days, the old fixed blade stuff, and they'd reach out to me and say, well, we like your stuff is nice. And so I said, I really love to pick your brain. You're doing what I think I want to do. Go ahead and name names here. Alan Leishowitz is a guy who was from Dallas and had been involved in exactly the same martial art that I was involved in. And so I talked to Alan about it. I went out to Blade Show. Actually, before I rewind, I actually met Alan at Blade Show back in like 2003 or something. Anyway, but I connected with him, and I was, kind of just picking his brain about doing it full time. And so, kind of at that crucial point, I can say Alan was a big help in terms of, especially for technical stuff. I know you know Alan, so
yeah. That's quite the person to just stumble across that you're.
It was just
doing the same thing.
It was just dumb luck. It was just dumb luck. Alan, a longtime martial artist as well, and luckily, as luck would have it, Alan was a longtime martial artist with some of the same guys that I was a martial artist with, and so we had mutual friends. And this is actually a brilliant story. This would be great for the podcast, I guess.
And he told you going full time was a good idea.
Yeah.
Oh no. There's a lot of funny stories in this. Tell me how much of the story I should tell in public, but we were in the pit.
Well, I know Alan, and I say about half that's not legal for public expression.
Yeah, I know. Maybe I'll omit any of the stuff that might not be. Me and the guy I told you about earlier, Ken Ishikawa, and I keep wanting to say this because Ken is he's absolutely not interested in knife making or knife design, but there's a lot of my designs. There is no Biegler Bladeworks without my friend Ken Ishikawa, and I constantly give him credit for this. Ken is a brilliant artist and a great designer, and without his kind of spark and genesis to, I was like, Ken, how do you design knives? And he really just, showed me his drawings, and this relates to martial arts and otherwise. Some of the shapes I still use are directly inspired by the designs he made. So me and Ken went to Blade Show. God, I think it was like 2003 or something. It's a funny story. And just, I long before I ever considered being a knife maker like I am today. And I was making knives at the time, but nothing like this. And me and Ken went out there, and we were in the pit, and I roll up to the bar there at the Renaissance Waverly. And I'm like, Alan Leishowitz is there. No, wait, shit, it wasn't even Alan Leishowitz. Hold on, this is the part of the story I can't figure if I have to omit. Ken is a massive knife nut. I mean, he's like the biggest knife nut ever, and used to be. He kind of dropped out of it. But he had, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, Ken had the entire Benchmade catalog times. He had like 4 of every model. When he ordered knives from Newgram back in the day, he would order like 4 of everything he ordered. The dude had totes and totes and totes full of all these Benchmades. He had basically the entire catalog. He was a huge fan of Benchmade, okay, and a little bit of Spyderco too. So we roll up to the bar, and Les Dassis is there with, I guess, the VP of Benchmade or something. And I don't know who these dudes are. And Ken goes, "Oh shit, that's Les Dassis." And so he's like, he wants to meet him. He's like, "Hi, I'm Ken. I have all of your knives.
I have all of them.
All of them. Every one of your knives." Literally, the guy had the whole damn catalog. And so I'm like, "Okay, cool. That's neat." And so he turns around, talks to us, and I'm like, "Oh, you're Les Dassis. Okay." So my favorite knife at the time, this was in 2004 or 3. I had been to Thailand a couple times, and so this is why this is important. So I'm like, "Hi, Les. I'm Brian." It says so I start talking. I was like, "Man, my favorite knife is the 710. Love the knife. It's my lucky knife. I carried a 710 Benchmade to every country I've ever been, and then if I ever go to a new country, I feel kind of weird. I need to take it with me because it's kind of a good luck charm. I've always loved this knife. It was the first high-end folder I've ever owned in my life. It was a Benchmade 710. I think I paid $100 for it. I don't know, in 2003 or something like that. And so I tell him this story. And so the first time I'd ever been to Bangkok was 2004. And I'm I'm with my girlfriend at the time and her parents. Her parents live in Kuala Lumpur. And her dad's they're from America. Her dad's an kind of mid-level oil executive, and he's working with Petronas in Kuala Lumpur. So we're in Bangkok and we're on vacation, and we're going to my first ever, or was it second? Anyway, we're going to a Muay Thai fight at Lumpini Stadium. And so we go across Bangkok and we go through all this traffic, and we're late, and it's a real nightmare getting across Bangkok, and nobody knew what to do and how to do it and stuff. And so it's like a very stressful event. And we roll up to Lumpini Stadium, and there's a metal detector. Okay. And so I walk up and I'm like, ooh,
this isn't going to go well.
This is not good. And, and it's my first time in country. I'm like, I don't know how to act and whatever. So I go, look, the parents walk in. I'm like, I got to go outside.
Awkward.
Yeah. So I run outside. And I go to this sidewalk. You can't really call it a cafe in Asia. It's just people drinking on the sidewalk and tables and chairs. And I am like, first time in country. So I'm like, I sit down, order beer, and there's a planter, and I stuff the knife in a planter behind my chair and down in the dirt. And then I go, now I can clear the metal detector, go watch the fights, have an awesome time. Saw a great, I think a spinning elbow knockout. I was like thoroughly excited. So I come back outside and then at the table. So now I need to go sit back at the same table and discreetly pull the knife out. My table is open, but sitting next to the table is 4 cops at the next table.
Oh, nice. That is good.
So I sit down dead casual, and and eventually I work the knife out of the dirt. I'm trying to reach behind my butt in a chair, totally casual, digging a knife out of the dirt, and it's still there. And so I still have it to this day. So it's like my lucky knife. It's the one. I won't go to a new country without putting that in my suitcase. Even though I don't even carry the knife anymore, and the tip's broken off. And I if I go to a country I've never been to before, I take the knife because now it's my lucky charm.
That's awesome. That is.
So
have it. That's awesome.
I still have it. Yeah,
great.
For sure. No, you can't. If somebody stole that knife, I'd be distraught. So I tell Les Dacius this story at the Renaissance Waverly, whatever year this is, and he's like, "Wow, that is a cool Benchmade story, man." I'm like, "Thanks." And so here's the funny part: I had heard I'm a whiskey drinker, and so in the midst of this conversation, I had heard Les order. And you guys, of course, you drink at Blade Show all the time. It's hotel prices. Les, at the time, he's drinking it was like a double Glenfiddich, I think. And you order a double Glenfiddich at a hotel, it's quite expensive. And so, but here's the thing, and this is what I knew. It was like, he's like, can I buy you a drink? And I said, sure, man, I'll just have what you're having. And the funny part, which is a completely honest, that's a totally okay answer.
Sure.
If somebody offers to buy you a drink, right? I mean, it's not a dick.
Having.
It's not a dick move. I just said, no, it's what you're having. But I had heard him order.
Nice.
And he's like, he ordered, and then the look on his face, he's like,
yeah, right. Like, I gotta buy this guy.
I know. I gotta buy this stranger a $35 scotch or whatever it was.
He can afford it.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Fine. So I thought it was funny because I heard him order.
Great.
So that's why I said it. And so he ordered. This is the great part of the story. So he ordered. I get the drink and I'm drinking and a lot. And she doing the pit. And then finally they leave and stuff. Here's the Alan part of the story. As it so happens, I mean, like 2 feet to the left of Les Dacius, Alan Leishowitz is bellied up to the bar, which is, I can't believe they were that close to each other. And then Alan, right after they leave, I get closer to the bar and I kind of turn to Alan and I'm going to start talking to him because I'm going to say, hey, me and you know the same guys. And Alan just looks me dead in the eye and goes, you know that guy? And then I'll stop there. I'm not going to say anything else that was said after that. But
okay.
That's how,
that's far enough.
Yeah, it's far enough. That's how me and him connected. Me and Alan connected. It's a pretty funny story.
That's awesome.
We've been talking ever since.
Wow. That's a great Benchmade. That's a great knife story. That's great. That's,
Yeah.
well earned token.
Well earned scotch.
Yeah. Absolutely.
For sure.
Me and Jared had a similar story about
That's-
that with someone buying a drink, but we didn't even get to watch their face until they got the bill.
Yeah. It was just afterwards.
Oh no, he knew it was funny when I said, whatever you're having.
Whatever you're having is what I'll have. That's
Yeah,
great.
exactly. Yeah.
Um.
Anyway, that's how I know Alan, and
Okay.
we just been talking ever since. He's believe me, man. You know Alan. He's we call him my buddy. Some of the guys that my other friends, they call him Knife Jesus.
I mean, he's one of those characters in the community that like
he's
somehow
Knife Jesus.
he's been there forever. And
when I decided to go full retard into knife making, I knew CNC was going to have to be involved. I didn't know anything about CNC at all. I mean, nothing. And so some of the years I was in Thailand, I started trying to figure out how to start doing 3D modeling. That first guy I talked about earlier, Ken, had told me, it kind of taught me how to use Adobe Illustrator, which helped me design knives in Illustrator, which is not a CAD program, obviously. But then I knew that I could see that the future of knife making was definitely going to be in 3D modeling and CNC years ago. And so I kind of tried to get some pirated software there in Chiang Mai, because I could really jump on my 125cc Honda Dream scooter and go down to a software shop and ask some Thai guys if they what software you got for it, and they have everything in there. And it ended up not being the way I ended up going, or I'm not going to use pirated software obviously for my business, but I tried to figure out exactly what the hell was going on with it, just dipping my toes into it. So years later, when I leave the ranch and decide I'm going to go full retard, I had got in contact with Ryan from RMJ Tactical, who's a really super cool dude. You guys probably met him. It's really, and I can't speak enough about what a nice guy he is, and a supportive guy to other knife makers and anybody. Just a really good soul. And he's like, I'm a fan, and I said, man, I really am interested in learning about how to produce knives with CNC. He's like, dude, come out to Chattanooga and see what we got going here, how the operation works. And he gave me, so I flew out to Chattanooga, and he gave me like 2 days of his time. I mean, like 8 hours each day. Just really lined out exactly what it took to run an operation to make knives on CNC, and it probably the biggest single boost up I've ever had in knife making that got me to where I am today, honestly.
I mean, that's super legit, actually.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I mean, he's very, very giving of his time. He's a really great guy.
I mean, that's sometimes the difference. We talk about this a lot on here, but the difference in a lot of these stories is the same as the differences in a lot of industries, which is, this industry, like some other smaller, and everybody chill out, cottage industry, but like it's, people tend to be very sharing in the knife community, which I think is important, because they realize a lot of times when they show people something, that person in a few years could be, in theory, in other industries, that would be your competition. But here it's just like, no, like, this is important. I don't own this knowledge. I'm just borrowing it. And, I'm going to tell you, because you never know. You might produce a really awesome product that, people are going to like, which is important.
Yeah. So everything in terms of using a CNC, that got me started. Mostly got me started to know that it was possible that I could do it, because I have no machining background. The most machining before I got the CNC, I got a Chinese manual C-mill, like a $4,000 bed mill type thing with, and I was doing a little bit of hand milling. And I was talking to Alan, he's like, well, you should do some of it by hand, because he's all by hand guys, no CNC. And I did that to kind of give me an idea of because I'm just grinding everything, and whenever there's a problem with a thing, I revert to the grinder because I did so much grinding. Yeah, no, I did so much grinding. I did years and years of grinding. I made over 100 knives on $100 grinder. Okay.
Damn. All right.
See,
Yeah, and
Alan says, just figure out all manual first. But he has like the coolest manual machines ever, and like
no shit. Yeah. Okay.
crazy
So
fixtures and shit.
that's what we call about Knife Jesus, because you're like, okay, Alan, you're like figured out a manual, but not all of us can understand how to buy a Swiss mill from the 1800s, refurbish the mill, and then run it perfectly to make stuff that like watchmakers used to use in 1868.
It's just that easy, man.
Custom watchmaking fixtures and all this stuff.
Right,
So
right,
I'm like, all that combined is one CNC mill. One CNC mill.
His level of manual knowledge is just ridiculous. So, and even I remember calling him one time. I was like, "Oh, I'm in." This relates to car stuff I told you about before. I was at a car shop with guys who build custom cars, and this guy, we got this old mill from elementary school, and we're thinking about selling it for like $2,000. And he's like, "You can buy it, Brian." And I'm like, I don't know anything about mills. And so I call Alan. Alan lives in New Braunfels, which is just north of San Antonio. So I call Alan, and he's like, "Oh, well, just check this, this. He's giving me all this technical shit on the phone." Because he likes to talk on the phone, and I'm like, "Alan, man, I don't have a clue any of these words you're saying.
Like,
what do
all
they
this
mean?"
gibberish? I don't know what
Yeah.
it is. I don't know.
And like, Alan, I can't go check. I don't even remember all the shit you said. And so Ryan was a bit of a godsend then, because then he's like, "Look, dude, just buy a CNC. So, if you can get the financing, just do it." Ryan allowed me to be able to have the confidence to just buy a CNC and figure out how to use it by myself. And that's what I did. And that's what got me to the production level that I'm at now. I can never produce as many knives as I do now.
So what year are we looking at that you jumped into CNC about?
I think I got this is easy. This is funny. I purchased the CNC the day that Donald Trump was elected president, and I got delivery of it when he was inaugurated as president.
No shit. Okay. There you go.
So exactly. I remember. It's just funny because even my dad joked about it. He's like, "We purchased this, and then it's here on the days inaugurated." So those are exactly the days. So 2016.
Damn. Okay. All
And
right.
I literally had the Haas guy. When you buy one, you get the local Haas dealer. Comes out and they say, "Okay, you get 3 technical training sessions from whoever's going to show up from the local distributor," and they sent out their tech guy once or twice, and that guy, I don't know, he was like an old school machinist, and he was talking to me still in words that I couldn't understand. And so then I talked to the dude who sold it to me, and I was like, "Look, I know that guy's an old machinist," and the guy's like, yeah. I said, "Could you just come out and just tell me how to push these buttons and figure this shit out?"
You're just like, fuck, what am I doing?
Just give me enough to get started. And finally on that third trip, when the guy says, "Look, just do this is kind of how it works." And then, like every other guy who's, I think Les George said it was funny in one of these groups around on Facebook. Look, they'll sell these machines to anybody, and they don't care if you know how to use them. Like everybody else, a lot of broken end mills and a lot of luckily not a lot of crashes or anything, because I'm deathly afraid of that, because it's expensive. So just a lot of broken end mills and learning a little, and from that original bed mill, learning how to not run it too fast, too slow. I'm just flying by the seat of my pants. And then if I have a machining question, I could text Ryan or the dude that's Ryan's CNC guy in his shop. And then that's it. And then that.
All right.
Yeah.
I like that. Like, you know what? You don't have to be
really
special.
just a whole lot of
They'll
trial
just-
and error, man.
They'll just send this stuff to you. Like, you want a mill? We'll sell you one.
No,
of these.
they'll
Like,
sell them to anybody.
No problem. You got the money?
Sure,
Like,
I've
good.
surely
Right.
broke a lot of carbide A mills, but I think every knife maker has probably
Oh,
gone
yeah.
through that, and surely every machinist. And I know other guys like Brian Nadeau is a good example. I luckily I
Good
befriended.
example, but horrible mentor.
No, but I love Brian's work. I thought his shit was really awesome right from the get go. First time I ever saw it, and so I make sure to, you know, we became guys. I could talk to him, and I knew he was an expert machinist. But he'll even tell me, you wouldn't believe, Brian, the one time I crashed a machine like this, you know. So you don't.
Are you
feel
talking
so
about the
bad.
vice? Are you talking about the face mill through the vice?
Exactly. You know the story.
Well, no, Brian was my mentor. He was the reason I got a CNC.
Yeah, no. Me and you actually talked to each other at Brian's table at the Vegas show one time.
Yeah,
when
we
were all
also
going
hung
over
out at PBK's back room. So.
this. For sure.
No, but like I used to ask him questions. So I didn't plan on getting a CNC. When I walked into his shop one day, I walked down. I was like, well, if I don't have one by the end of the year, I can't be full time. This was me being
sure.
like a year into full time.
No, totally.
And I had one 9 months later. But like when I had to ask him questions, I was like, "Hey, Ron, like I don't know what to do." And he was like, "What the fuck do you want?"
Yeah.
But I'm like, "I think I need to do this, but this seems smarter." And they're like, "Whatever works." I'm like,
Yeah. No.
like, can you just tell me which one's better? He's like, well, I feel safe if that's your decision. I'm like, he's like, I feel safe if you're gonna do that on your machine. I'm like,
Right.
Here,
I feel okay if it's with your machine.
That's
good.
yeah,
I
I'm
like
like,
that.
But
most, like,
if you knew absolutely dick about CNC, Brian could at least say, you may have to try this and this and this. You know?
no, it made you question make you question yourself with the questions you asked.
Yeah.
That's what you want.
It's helped. He's given me a few good tips. You know.
Keep it.
I think I messaged him like a week ago. No, like 3 weeks ago, and I was getting delivery of the second mill, and I was like, "Hey, like I'm having like a hell of a time transporting this thing, and this is the only truck bed that I've been able to find. It's technically half air ride, half not, and like, is this a good idea?" And he's like, "Well, I feel safe if you're doing it with your machine." I'm like, "God damn it." I'm like, look, man, this is the third attempt to move this machine. First guy, wrong truck. Second guy died on the way there, and like, I'm hoping third time's the charm.
Like, would you do this? Like, I would happily do this with your car. Like, wait.
I hired professional machine movers for everything.
Fancy guy, huh? Okay. All right.
Couldn't imagine.
So Brian, you were you're saying you got a VF4 was the first machine?
It's a VF3. Yeah.
VF3. Okay. So you got the
Jerry,
VF3.
you've seen one of those. It's a big ass machine. That's pretty much the new machine.
It's got a lot of It's got a lot of X travel. It's 20 by 40.
It's the machine John just got.
Yeah, the really
It's 20
big
by
one.
40, 20 by 40 work envelope, and this is going back to Ryan from RMJ Tactical. It's the machines I use in their shop, and they were making. This is why it dovetailed into what I was doing, because going back to that original thing about making swords and stuff like that. I knew I needed to do that to keep that part of the business going. So I needed the work envelope. Those guys are doing tomahawks on 20 by 40 envelope machine. So I got the same. I basically just got the same machine that Ryan was using. That's why I got it.
Okay. So you got that, and you were still. So you're continuing. At this point, you're still doing the swords. You haven't gotten into the bally songs yet.
This is where we start with bally songs. Right?
Okay.
So the bally song thing, first of all, it was a natural extension of the Filipino martial arts, because bally song, as you know, is Filipino martial arts weapon. And so it was just a natural evolution of what was going to come next for what I was going to do. And the key there was that it was not only the natural evolution of what I was going to do, is I saw that there was a better hole there to be filled than there was in the folder market. Just meaning busting into the folder market is, man, that's crowded, right? So yeah, there's plenty of those. So I said, I did folders by hand. I think for a while I made enough of them by hand to know where that was at, and then I started making bally songs by hand, and boy, that was not fun. So I would never ever want to go back to make bally songs by hand.
Go ahead and skip that.
Yeah, absolutely skip that. No, I did. This is, like I said, when I decided I was going to go full on Knifemaker, I got a time sheet app on my phone, and I started, with consult with my dad because he's a businessman. He's like, well, you got to understand he's giving me all the business side of it. Look at what your inventory's got, this and that, and your supplies and your hours, and so I started tracking as many hours as I was spending making the bollies and how much it was costing, and started looking at the numbers to see if I could actually do this for a living. And I swear to God, I think those first months I was doing, we'll just talk about the bolly songs. I made a couple, like 4 or 5 bolly songs, full double bolster onliners bolly songs by hand, and I think it took me, I think I could put out 4 a month.
Yeah, that's
and I was like, oof, that's not gonna work. There's no way that's economically viable, and that kind of pushed me into doing it by CNC. So I knew that was the only way forward. And also, like I said before, I think anybody who was thinking in knife making, let's say 5 years ago, was like, look, CNC's it's where it's going.
Yeah, I definitely don't regret it.
Oh God, I don't regret it at all. And then there's actually even a funny Alan tie-in, because me and Al, he jokes about it now, because I had constantly, every time I go to Blade Show, I bounce this off Alan, and I was like, what? He's like, well, and then finally when I had kind of started making all the knives by CNC, CNC, but it's not just CNC, it's CNC. I do a mix, right? And we'll talk about that in a minute, but he kind of joked. He says, see, I told you, you should. We talked about the learning curve. And I'm sure Nick can corroborate this. The when you're like, oh, I've never made anything by CNC, there's a massive learning curve, right? Because you got to model, and then you got to understand how to run in CNC, and it's very unforgiving. You make a single mistake and your cam, and then bam, you just had a crash and all that stuff. So the learning curve is
forgiving.
It's not forgiving, and the learning curve is steep. But once you get past all that and figure out how to model it, the creative. Here's the deal: I had always had these ideas that I could never, the 3D stuff that I could never do with my hands, right? Because I can't on a mill, I can't control X, Y, and Z simultaneously, and all. It's just you just can't do the stuff by hand. You can do with CNC, and it's like everything. If you have a real good conceptual idea of what you can do in 3D, and that kind of turns you on, I guess is the best idea, the way to say that, then you can start to really. I had all these ideas years and years before that. It's like, oh, I wish I could do this in 3D, and it's nothing I could replicate with a grinder.
I bet you Alan has a fixture for it, though.
He doesn't. In terms of the handles. Okay, so we're talking about the handle and the blades are the blades. I mean, you can almost grind everything you want to grind in a blade, but when it comes to the handles, I don't know, there's kind of a whole world of new stuff.
Intricacies.
There is. And wow, just shameless plug here. I'm about to release a bunch of crazy stuff handle-wise, and I go into my brand. I do a lot of handles that are, I think, outside of the box for a lot of balisong makers, and I'm about to release like some stuff that's just absolutely insane, honestly.
I think one of the coolest balisong handles I think you do are the ones with the leather wrapping.
Yeah, I was gonna say those are pretty dope.
Yeah, that's an idea I had for a long time before I ever was able to conceive how to accomplish it.
Are you relieving the bottom to compensate for your thickness of the wrap?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I had to measure the goddamn thickness of the wrap to relieve the bottom, essentially. Just what you said.
Yeah, I saw you're working on a whole set right now, or a batch, right?
Yep. Yeah, the batch is about to drop, but that's not the crazy stuff.
Oh, that's not the crazy stuff.
No, I'm holding on to the crazy stuff.
Okay.
No, wait till you see the next stuff. It's going to be insane. Because I've gone even further than ever went before.
I mean,
it's just
that's the way to do
that's
it.
a neat thing about CNC is every crazy idea you have for the handle. I mean, the blade's a blade. I mean, outside of the thing that I think makes my brand strong is that I have a strong background in grinding, because that's just how I started making regular old fixed blades. And my old buddy Ken, I told you, he had good designs for blades, and we kind of collaborated and we made cool blades. He was always like blah on the handles. He's like, handle's a handle. I'm like, no, okay, blades are blades. There's every shape of blade, and then especially now, every possible conceivable non-traditional blade shape, and I try and push into non-traditional blade shapes, but those are all grinded out in every way, shape, or form, and you can help with CNC and this, that, and the other. But inside of the handle end of it, well, I mean, the sky's the limit,
Yeah, I mean, pretty much, essentially. I mean, you've got some pretty diverse blade styles. To be fair.
Yeah. No. That's my idea for now. If we cruise right into the belly songs, was I wanted to have a solid, recognizable blade shapes that when people looked at the blade, they go, "Oh, that's one of Biegler Bladeworks blades," and so I released them in succession as per the drawings and designs I've been using, drawing up for years now. And all those years I was sitting in Thailand, doing science and Muay Thai, I was drawing up blades and thinking about what I was going to eventually produce. And I hope that they're recognizable, and then stick with those recognizable blade shapes, not just willy-nillying all the, for lack of a better word, all those blade shapes, and then just giving interesting creative handle options on all of them. And so now my original plan was 5 blade shapes and then about 5 handles, and now I'm up to, I went from 5 blade shapes and then branched out to probably 10 handles, and now I've added 2 more blade shapes, and then I'm about to release a bunch of just kind of high custom crazy handle ideas that nobody's ever even thought of. And that gets me to where I'm talking. We can roll into belly songs now. A lot in the belly song market right now is guys are doing, I call it slots and dots, meaning
it's not inaccurate, to be fair, but
it's different well, I'm not taking shots at anybody, but the entire market looks a lot to be a different combinations of slots and dots, which that means is holes and slots in a titanium slab. And sure, there's nothing wrong with that, but now with the great belly song explosion of 2019, there's become so many different, almost unrecognizable. I mean, you can't even tell what you're looking at between whose knife is that and whose it isn't. And it's gotten so far that I even ratcheted back to traditional, just flat out inlays. Regular rounded inlays, which are honestly a giant pain in the ass to do. They're not easy to do. If they're dovetailed inlays, I end up with a lot of spare handles. That's the problem with belly songs. You're making slab handle belly songs and inlays. You're going to end up with, there's a lot of orphans, or one didn't quite, because you got to get the tolerances right inside the dovetails, and there's a whole lot of mix of, I've got really gorgeous ironwood, piece that turned out, but one piece turned out shit. So I end up with these wasted, just gorgeous pieces of ironwood, and one of them is fucked up because 1 out of 4, and then that whole set is trashed. And then you go back and try and match, maybe I'll get another piece of ironwood and try to match it to it. There's a lot of waste. That's all I can tell you.
I mean, I gotta say, the scales are great. I mean, it's really, I do like a lot of certain stuff we're seeing with the slots and dots, but
no, I mean,
your work with the scales is nice, because it's something that, you're right, nobody likes doing scales, but you know what, fucking scales are awesome and they sell really good, and it's a more traditional, super high end look for a bally song, and it's 4 of them. So I mean, I just think it's cool, because then you just end up with even more of whatever material that's your chosen material.
My my Moby Dick, my Ahab white whale, for the last 5 years has been, and I've always said I'm going to make 2 of these knives, and I'm keeping 1. Is every year I go to the blade show, I go to that big stag supplier at the front of the blade show, right by the front door, and I buy. Yeah, go to Culpeper and try and buy pieces of stag that are going to match.
Oh man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you think of it, I mean, because it's not, because they always come in sets of 2, right?
Yeah.
So it's, you got to get the radius right, and then I'm gonna have to flatten them out, and I'm just I don't know, maybe my final Bali song, I guess. Maybe by the end of my life I'll figure this out, because I've been buying every year what I buy at the blade show. One of the things I always buy is stag. But I'm always searching for these perfects so I can get 4 of those fuckers. And then you got to get the radius right, so the radius is centered on 2, right? But then you got to do the other 2, right? And so it's this quest I've been on for 5 years now, I think, trying to get the right set so that you can make one just this perfectly beautiful stag set Bali song.
I think that's a great.
I haven't got there yet.
Yeah, go for it.
Have you purchased a single piece of stag for it yet?
No, I just keep purchasing the scale sets, trying to match. Essentially, two sets.
Stag is
because you got to understand, you got to get the radius centered, because I want you
want it to curve naturally on the
the curve has to be in the middle of the curve of the handle.
Mm-hmm.
And also I don't want to waste just hours and hours of time trying to work on this one mad scientist project knife that's going to bankrupt me, essentially.
Just grinding away stag.
Grinding stag away, and then screaming, like and then I dovetail it and glue it in, and it doesn't work. I just lose my mind. It's a madness project.
So
it really is.
With the Bali songs, I mean, so you knew what you were getting into.
I saw a niche in the market and I decided to go for Bali songs, and it worked well in with the Filipino martial arts, really classically orientated into what I was doing martial arts wise, and 1, a niche in the market, 2, it worked in what I was already doing, and so I went for it hardcore.
Was there a point in building the knives that seemed like it was like a turning point with the Bali songs, or like as soon as you started making them, there was just immense interest? You know what I'm saying? Or was there like a moment where it was like?
No, I got interest right off the bat, because I had the first designer release was the rock style, and the rock style was just the blade shape that was it coincided with the fixed blades that I was doing. It connected directly with the fixed blades that I was already producing, and the shapes I was already producing, and honestly, it had a really good pop right at the beginning, and also I tried to. I mean, I had an angle on trying to get into the market. I almost wish I had got a little bit more insight into Bali songs before I did it, but I just want to make the knife and go. Now I've upgraded the handles, and altered them based on what the Bali song community is, interested in, and tried to figure out what they're interested in, which wasn't exactly what my concerns were, but I've tried to match what I'm making to what they want, basically. But right off the bat, it was a good match.
So
honestly.
the rock style blade, and just again, forgive the sort of generalization, but it would, for those people listening, it is sort of a kukri style-esque blade. Yes. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, it's honestly, to me, it's a recurve draw point.
Yeah, it's just generally for your sort of people listening, go on Instagram. But exactly. It's more complicated than that, but it's sort of.
It's a recurve draw point. The blade design is a direct descendant of the fixed blades.
Okay.
Which were designed for fighting. So my most successful fighting blades were the rock style blade shape, if you can imagine it in fixed blade forms. And that's because as it applied to Kali, and now it gets really into it's a fighting blade. It's not a utility. I mean, let's face it, it's not a utility blade. You can't cut carrots with a recurve. That's what it was meant to do. So the reinforced tip was for stabbing, and the secondary point at the end of the recurve was for leading the cut into defensive. Let's just call it self-defensive applications. And that's what the blade was meant to do. And that was the original design of it. That was the original thrust of the design. And that was the original thrust of design in the fixed blades that preceded it. It just happens to be a really attractive blade shape. And then I just had to modify. That blade shape has actually been modified into my best-selling fixed blade, and as well as the balsa.
Okay.
It wasn't just a purely aesthetic consideration, is what I'm trying to say. There's a meaning behind the whole thing. And before all this Balathong thing started, I used to go to martial arts conferences for instructors in Cali, and I used to actually just take a briefcase full of fixed blades and sell them to guys at the conference, and then I would talk about essentially the effective characteristics of this martial arts blade, and those are translated into the Balathong. They're probably a bit lost in the Balathong crowd at this point, but that's the original thrust of that design.
That's pretty gnarly.
It really is. That's really the thrust of that design. That's where it came from.
So then my next we'll stay on blade shapes for a second. My next favorite one would be the stink finger, which is it's Chris like.
I call it. You know what I called that? You know what the original working title of the stink finger was Lazy Chris.
Lazy Chris.
So everyone's always going, oh, every traditional Balathong maker has to make a Chris. And I have talked to a couple different guys who have ground Chris, including Alan. And so, we even talked about it. I was like, how do you grind it? And he told me how he ground it on a 2-inch wheel, vertically and all this stuff. And I talked to a couple other guys that did it. And I was like, yeah, that's cool and I understand, but it's like, I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze on that. I understand. I understand it's like, a bit of an Everest. You got to climb it and do it. And every guy I know who does it about once or twice.
Hey, I did it drunk, so you could definitely do it.
But I totally get it. But after grinding so many swords, meaning like when it comes to like an Everest, I'm like, shit, man, can I grind a 19-inch, curved sword? I'm like, I've done a lot of that.
19-inch Chris is a little different. Okay.
Yeah,
never mind. I thought you were talking about Balathong blade.
No, we are. But what I mean was when everybody's like, oh, you got to grind a Chris, I'm like, yeah, I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze. Maybe one day I'll do it. I have a lot of other crazy grinds I try and do. And there's a lot in difficult grinding. I got a 12-inch dagger that I ground once, and the whole dagger blade is only like a little over a 1/2 inch wide. So it's like a 2-inch wheel. It's like a letter opener, but not. I'm just saying, there's a lot of crazy grinds I do, and every other guy's doing a Chris, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just not gonna do a Chris. So I started drawing up this thing, and just had this crazy idea, and I called it the Lazy Chris, which was a Chris that only turned like once. That's where the stink finger came from.
That's great.
And so it's a recurve.
No, it's like
it's like a really lazy Chris.
Yeah, it's literally like it's a Chris with like 2 curves in it, maybe like the one on the bottom, one on the top. Like it's really,
and so
it has a very particular look to it. That's the thing.
There's a secondary blade in Paquita Tertia, the guy that ran the system called Tim Wade and Grand Tuhon Liu Guy. They've decided that the blade of the Paquita Tertia Kali was going to be Gununting, which you see me make a lot, which is this long, super curved, nasty looking blade that originally orientated from harvesting sugarcane. And the secondary blade of that system is called a talabong, and the talabong has this lazy curve. It recurves and then comes back up, and so the stink finger ended up being the kind of knife version of the talabong, and I make a talabong, so it kind of was the companion set to that, and that also gels with, if you do Filipino martial arts, in addition to having a sword, they also have a companion knife a lot of times, and some guys study this, and it's called a espada daga, but it matches with the long blade and the short blade, and that one actually matches with the other long blade. But I called it the Lazy Chris at first. And
No,
that's
so what-
and it, don't ask me where the name came from because that was just a lark.
So the only reason I want to tell you the story of me grinding the Chris, the only reason I say it is because I think it's funny. Jeremiah and the other co-host Elijah just happened to be at my shop. I forgot which show it was, but they were staying with me for the week, and they were with me at the shop, and we got really drunk late at night at the shop.
Happens.
And Jared was talking about like the amazingness of some maker grinding this Chris, and I started talking shit. I was like, whatever, grinding Chris is fine, whatever. I didn't do that. Yada yada yada. He's like, he goes, well, you can't. I'm like, I'm drunk as shit at this point. I'm like, well, hold my beer. Oh, I thought it was actually it was literally hold my whiskey.
It was whiskey.
Right.
And then he goes on IG Live to make this worse. He's like, well, if you can't do it, I'm going to be recorded. And I just grabbed, looking for a piece of steel. I find a piece of 1095, and like, it was like it was like an hour or 2 hours of recording because I'm trying to draw out
It was
a
for a
symmetrical
while.
Chris.
Yeah.
Because I have to draw this thing, and I'm like, this doesn't look right. Elijah goes on full artist and like taking 2 pieces of paper trying to make it symmetrical.
You guys were like head to head trying to draw this Chris out for a while.
He's drawing. I'm like, you can draw whatever you fucking want. I'm grinding this motherfucker. Like, I'm gonna draw it. I'm gonna grind it.
Right.
So I cut this thing out of the bandsaw really quick. I had some 1095. I'm not hardening it. Just all I had. Like, I didn't have any standard steel.
Right.
And I proceeded to grind it. And he's explaining. Jeremiah has never ground a blade in his life. He's explaining to me how it's supposed to be ground on the corner of the wheel vertically. I mean, like normal position grinder. And I'm like, no, you have to do it with the wheel sideways.
Yeah, it's pointing. Yeah.
The other way around, where the wheel either you hold it vertically or you turn the wheel horizontal.
Exactly.
He's like, no, this is how it's done. I'm like, dude, I'm the knife maker. This is how it's done. He's like, well, you can't do it. And I go on and proceed, drunk as shit, as they're recording me, and I'm like, see, this is hard. I'm like, this is easy. In my head, I'm like, oh, it's a little hard, but like, it looked good on camera with the way my hands were moving. So I'm like, I'm trying to play this off. And I kept looking at it.
Totally fine.
And it looked like shit at first. And as I'm grinding, I'm like, oh, this looks pretty good. In my head, I'm like, fuck, this looks good. I can't believe it. But on camera, it looks great. I'm like, well, I guess I did it. I drilled a hole in it, put a ring on it. I'm like, here's a souvenir. And I think I engraved, hold my beer. I'm going to get this shit done or some shit on it. He has it somewhere.
I think that was brilliant. Maybe for the Kentucky show.
It was either Kentucky or New York Knife Show. I don't remember, but you have it somewhere. It's dated.
Actually, just found
Did you make a knife out of it?
No.
No.
It's drunk as shit. I don't have a
It's chisel
design.
ground. It's chisel ground. So
Yeah, I just did one side just to show him I could do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a quick, like, on video, like, if I'm like, okay, if I'm talking shit, I gotta at least show that I could do it. And for my first attempt, it was pretty good. I did it on the 6-inch wheel horizontally.
It's a fun blade design. I am a huge fan of the Chris. I had Chuck make me a Chris fixed blade. Like,
Yeah.
I dig the Chris.
I even did it without a fixture, and I fixture grind. That was mostly, they don't get how amazing, even more amazing that is. But I don't know how you grind, but like that's even more amazing because I've been grinding on a fixture for 7 years. It's been a while since I freehand ground.
No, when I first thought about grinding like a volley blade or anything, Chris, I don't know, years ago I probably talked to Alan about it because I know he hand ground one years ago, and he's like, yeah, it was vertical on a 2-inch, and then I talked to everybody that ever did it, and it was like vertical on a 2-inch. But yeah,
it doesn't look as wavy if it's like the one he showed me wasn't done the way we described it. It was done on a platen, on the corner of the platen.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look as wavy.
Yeah. If you go with a 2-inch and go vertical, you can get like a tight wave. And if you guys want to even go just a bit deeper here for the this would be great for the podcast. You're talking about Chris. So the really quintessential Chris come from Indonesia, right? And it's indicative of silat. And so the Chris blade in Indonesia is it's a rite of passage blade for a male, like adult male in Indonesia, and you are if you receive a Chris, that's a sign of manhood, I guess, or whatever. And a Chris is a very important symbolic blade in Indonesian. Everything about Indo and then Indonesian martial arts. And so it's a very Indonesia, really superstitious and interesting place. And then Chris are wrapped up in all the superstition and interesting. Indonesia has an interesting mix of animism and a little bit of Buddhism and whatever mix of, I don't know, crazy Austronesian shit that's gone through Indo. If you ever know anybody that does Silat a lot or is really obsessed with Indonesian stuff, especially in the martial arts, they can talk about it. So Chris is a lot of, I don't know, mojo voodoo behind a Chris, right? And so it becomes real important with a Chris, like how many curves it has and how it's made and who made it and all this mysticism. And I'm going to tell you a funny Chris story. So one of the first big-time Indonesian martial artists that made his way in the United States to start teaching people was a guy named Herman Sawanda, and he was a part of the, it's called the Mande Muda system. And Herman, I had a connection with him and those guys because one of the first guys in the United States to connect with Silat practitioner, Herman, was a dude from my school here in Dallas, as well as a dude in Tulsa. I can't remember his name right now off the top of my head. But so Herman comes over, and there's some guys in my like Jeet Kune Do, Jinfan mixed school started to get really interested in a lot. And so Herman comes over. And so instantly people are talking about Chris and stuff like that, and Indonesian blades and whatnot. And somehow, I don't know, like 2 or 3 years after this started, then we've got this little group of people here that are doing Indonesian Pencak Silat. And we go to eat dinner at the Thai restaurant down the street from the school. And then somebody in the table, we had like 17 people at the table, and then somebody had been given or gifted a Chris blade, a traditional Javanese Chris. And then they say, "Here, Herman, would you please inspect this Chris to tell me if it's a good Chris or a bad Chris, or whether it has bad mojo, good mojo." I swear to God, we're sitting at the table eating dinner, and he looks at it, and he's like, I swear to God, he takes it close to his head and he counts the curves, and then the last part he does, he smells it, and he goes, "No, this Chris is bad luck." So no, I'm serious. They're really, it's a really, I don't know, voodoo would be the closest thing I think. It's, if you ever looked into the mysticism of Indonesia, this is really what it's about. And he looks at it and goes, "No, this is a bad Chris." And I'm sitting at the table, and I'm not into Javanese mysticism, and I go, "Hey man, I'll take it."
Hey, well, you know, you don't want that. That's
yeah, I know. So she gave it to me. She was like, "Here, it's yours.
Shit.
This is bad luck." And here's the funny part of the story. So I take the Chris, and then like I'm a young man at the time. I'm like I don't know, 22, 23 years old. I have like this run of bad luck for like 2 to 3 3 years. And at the end of it, I was so distraught. I mean, there was some really run of bad luck. I was so distraught. I took that goddamn knife and I threw it in the dumpster.
oh shit.
I swear to God. And never to be heard from again, because I was honestly at the, you know, if you've ever been at the end of your rope, you're like, I don't even know what this, you know, why is everything, you know, this is really bad luck, bad girlfriend, bad everything. And I was like, oh, fuck this shit. And I threw that knife away. That's my funny Chris story. I haven't told anybody that story in years. It just made me think of it when we were talking about Chris.
You're really fucked if somehow it appeared back up in your life. Like, oh, God.
You know what I did? I bent it in half and then threw it in the dumpster.
There you go. All right. That's the ultimate like nail in the coffin move. Like, it's not coming
No,
back.
but I mean, look. If I mean, you guys think about my thinking at the time. The martial arts master from Indonesia says, "No, this is a bad blade. It's very bad luck. Don't touch it." And I go, sure, I'll take it. Fuck it.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Again, I'm like, whatever, man. And then I took it, and then after all these, you know, a couple years of bad luck, I was like, shit, man. What if it's the knife?
What if it's that goddamn knife? What if it's that goddamn knife, man?
Hey, I threw it away.
I mean, sometimes you got to clear it out. You know, you look in the closet and you're
so
just like,
when you guys ask me, when anybody, now you guys get the full beef, the full dish here on the podcast. I've never ground a crisp blade.
It's full circle. See that? Full circle.
I swear to God, that's why, you know, juice isn't worth the squeeze, man.
Wow.
What if I grind it wrong and it's bad luck?
I mean,
Well, you don't have to deal with it because it leaves your possession once you sell it.
That's right. Say exactly.
No, but I created it. I would still feel bad. You know, they in the original Chris, they're supposed to incorporate components of meteorites and whatnot into the blade, and there's a special acid etch and all this kind of I mean, and then the guy's got to like kiss it, and the smith who makes it, his like lip imprint is on it, and acid and stuff. There's a lot of mysticism in a Chris, and anyway, after a little bit of run of bad luck, I'll probably never make a Chris. That's all I'm saying. So we're left with the stink finger.
I mean, that works. The stink finger, it's very distinctive. You know, you can see it, and you're like, I know exactly where that came from. And so you're talking about introducing new blade styles that maybe we haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
Okay. And now, are we doing traditional Filipino weapons? I mean, is there a Campbell in there somewhere?
No, the latest one was super traditional Japanese, and I'm certainly not the first maker who's tried to stuff a katana blade into a balisong, but when I got this one I got going right now, when I started designing it, and I know other guys have done it for sure, they'll straighten it out or put a clip in it, a clip point, to make it fit in the handles. And I can understand, just drawing it out and looking at the way the hands are going to fit, I can understand the frustration. For me, is in addition to Southeast Asian blades and stuff, I'm really into Japanese stuff too. So for me, all Japanese blades are the number one component to me is what they call the sori, the curve. The Japanese aesthetic to me is all about the curve, just for me personally. So I wanted to get that curve into everything I make, and really that just single line that runs along the spine of the blade is the curve that actually makes it elegant. And obviously you got to get the grinds and stuff right too, but that's kind of secondary to getting the whole design right. And so I wanted to do it without sacrificing, without having to make a sacrifice to fit it in the handles. And I've got a lot of failures here where the tip is hitting the back spacers and stuff like that, where you can't fit it inside the handles, because the balisong is a straight concept, right? The handle's got to wrap around the blade, both, when it's closed. And so I tried to figure out some way to stuff all that curvature into the straight handles. When you do a balisong in an offset tip, and I do a couple designs that are offset tips, meaning the tip is not on the center, it's tough to stuff it in the handles. So I hope I've kind of succeeded here lately with this newest blade design, which is just, absolutely traditional katana shape. It's not even a traditional Japanese tanto shape. Super traditional Japanese tanto is a very straight blade that's actually quite boring looking. If you really want to get into a traditional tanto, if you're into Nihonto,
if you're into that kind of thing.
Yeah. The tantos aren't, profile wise, they aren't terribly interesting, but when you get into the longer blades, the curve that gives it what it's looking for. So I'm trying to get the grinds.
I feel attacked here.
The grinds, the curve, and then and stuff it all into a handle that can close around it without clipping it, without making it straight.
Right. Because so that katana blade you do, that's the one I've seen with the leather wrapped handles. That gets that treatment. Right?
That was the idea. That was the original concept idea. That one and the other the Zakuri was like it's a bit of a modification off of the Japanese tanto blade called an Unokubi Zakuri tanto, which is what the fuck? It's a bird. Unokubi is it's a cormorant actually. Now we're getting really deep here, but it's a bird neck tanto blade, and so that was the inspiration for the Zakuri. That's straight, so that's a tanto blade. But I really wanted to get something that was more like a sword, and that's essentially gonna be my 6th blade shape, and that's the one that I'm pushing out right now. And then it meshes with the Tsukamaki wrapped handle, and then I'm doing them with Hamon in rare cases when I really want to punish myself.
There you go. You just dive in there, man. Just go for it.
Yeah. So the idea was, being background in martial arts, and then the idea being that it's really great if every man can own a sword and carry it. We can't do that in this modern age right now, obviously. So I was like, shit, man, what if I can make a bally song that's like being able to carry your own katana? Not that it's really applicable to carry, but I just could I mimic the carrying a real Japanese sword in the size of a balisong, and a balisong was actually a good medium to do it better than a folder, right? Because it's straight handles, and the way that the handles articulate, you could probably figure it out, and that was the genesis of that project. And then the idea was to get it with a Tsukamaki wrapped handle, in some fashion with super tiny leather. Obviously you couldn't do it with regular silk ito, and make it into a knife, and then actually do W2 real differentially heat treated Hamon, clay tempered, everything. And that's what I've shot for on that project, and that's not the thrust of my main production, obviously, because it's a nightmare, but I try and do it when I can, and it's the thing that I'm most excited about doing, because of the you don't know if you're going to fail every time you do it. I mean, when you do the if you do Hamon and clay temper, okay, the bigger the blade, the easier it is. Meaning, if you did, every guy's doing Hamon stuff now is usually like Bowie knife, like size. The thicker the steel and the bigger the knife, the easier it is. The smaller you get, the more difficult it gets, because you're essentially, when you do Hamon, you're trying to screw up the heat treat perfectly, and what that means is you try and screw it up such that you only harden the edge and not the rest of it. Well, if you think about the physics of it, the thickness of the blade and the size of the blade, the heat travels through the blade at a certain rate or whatever. If it's a big blade, it's going to travel slower, and a thicker blade is going to travel slower. But when you get down to a fucking balisong blade, it's like 4 inches, man. Right? It's 4 inches, and it's a 156 thickness. So we're looking at a 156 cross section with a 4-inch blade. There's not a lot of wiggle room in terms of where that Hamon line is going to go. And that's where we're at with that project.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
Don't look for a lot of them to be produced. Is all I have to say.
And that's that's another thing. So you do a lot of these ballys that you do. These are short run pieces. I mean, you have blade styles you like, but I do know just from talking in and obviously dealing in them that certain things you do, like you did the sharks for a while.
Yeah. Oh shit, I need to do more of those. Those are great. Yeah.
Stuff like that. You'll just do it in short runs, very specific, and I also like that, because then it's like it's a blade shape we're familiar with and a dress that we're not, and it's like and like the stink finger, I know you only do those, like that is not a regular blade. I mean, it is a regular blade.
No, I'll do like a dozen a year, maybe, or some years I may not do them at all. I may do 20 a year. Yeah, for sure.
So I mean, that's also like a fun. I know that collectors like that, and it's just it brings a scarcity into it, so you do feel like that knife is even more special. It's like, oh, there's only a couple of these this year. If you're collecting those, or if you're using them, whatever, like, better try to get it.
Yeah.
The sharks were really neat. Actually, that was a great.
I honestly need to bring that back in 2021. I think I may have to go back to that.
Yeah.
You know what was funny about the sharks was then all these guys like, oh my god, it's chisel.
Whatever.
And I'm like, hey man, look, that's the thrust of the design. It's ground on it's deep ground on one side. So I mean, it's not like I didn't shortchange this. It's like if I'm under a chisel, the cool thing about doing a chisel in whatever thickness you're going to do it is you can do a deeper grind, right? So you get that nice deep, just light reflective, cool grind on one side, and then it's flat on the other side. And it makes a statement. It's got a shark on it, or either did the happy crazy shark, or I did the old P40 Warhawk design on whatever. That was the thrust of the design, and then those guys like, oh my god, it's chisel. Come on, man.
Because you were gonna take that balisong and do so much cutting with it. Absolutely.
Right, exactly. I even totally off topic, but same thing with the handles. When I did the Voltron handle,
Those are bad. That was great.
I had the idea that I was like, what if I could figure out how to machine a handle that looked like it was bolstered, but it was a one-piece titanium handle, and I could get the grippiness that my old fixed blade customers used to love when I used to get some kind of grippy handle because they wanted something they could hold on to. Because this was a different set of customers, but I was like, what if I could get a grippy handle and then make this, just machine this faux bolster into a Balisong? And somebody once asked me, like, I bought this Voltron and the handle's so grippy. Could you replace the handles? I'm like, look, man, that's exactly the reason that design exists. I mean, everything is purpose driven. Like the first handle, just a normal Balisong handle, rounded 9-hole handle, is rounded, and then they're like, okay, I'll make a boxy handle. That was the Archon, and then and then sometimes you get guys saying, oh, if we could round the Archon handles, I'm like, we have products for every one of these needs. We can't just don't buy a Voltron and say it's too grippy. I mean, it was the whole thrust of the design was grippy. It was meant to be grippy, and the guys that like it, they're like, wow, this is the grippiest Balisong I've ever held. Yeah, that was the idea.
If you want to change the handle, you should just buy a different model.
Just bought a different one of the other models that absolutely covers what you're looking for.
Right, yeah, exactly. Like, I really like this blade and this handle. I just wish they were different. Like, well, that's a different knife, friend. Like,
I used to get those all the time. Like, I love everything about your knife, except can you do this, that, and that? And can it be an inch longer? And I'm like, well, I'm not the maker for you.
Yeah.
Or maybe you should have bought the other knife.
Yeah, right. Just buy the smaller one.
Because you really bought the custom short run one, and you probably should have just bought the normal one.
It's people. It's collectors get particularly picky. That's okay though. We love them.
But yeah, I jumped in the Balisong market at that time because I saw that was the best way I was if I was gonna go full blown CNC and do it. The first year I went to the Blade Show, I was the only major Balisong maker that showed up at the show. At all, so I could tell that there was there was a room there in the market,
right?
For somebody to jump in, as opposed to folders, right? Because folders is tough. So I decided to go into that, and it's just kind of blossomed. I've enjoyed, I just kind of found my niche, I guess.
I mean, it's a good niche. I mean, there's more people doing it now, but a lot.
Man,
just like
so
Switchblades, though, like even if there's more, there's nowhere near the amount that there are folders. Like there's not. Still,
and I think, and I've had these conversations with my other knife maker buddies, the guys I told you about. They'll eventually fall off, just in terms of Balisongs,
right?
Just because there was a hole there, and everybody tries to fill it real quick. And honestly, from one year to the next, and the
once
Blade
again,
Show,
I feel attacked.
there went from there being so many guys, nobody doing Balisongs, and then the next 2 years later, there's 30 to 40 more guys at the show with Balisongs.
Right.
I'll just wait.
I mean,
that's all I have to say.
Yeah, that works.
Slots and dots, man. Slots and dots.
That works. There's always there's an ask for every seat, right? Kind of thing.
Exactly.
Like there's a knife for every customer, and guys who collect Balisongs, it's just that's the one thing they collect, or the flippers. That's the one thing that they like. Right. So I mean,
that's an interesting market, isn't it?
It's different. I mean, it's definitely.
It is, yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's a strong market in some cases, and
right.
It's misunderstood in other ways, and it's very weird. Yes. Yep.
It is very weird. I agree.
Yeah. Like I definitely remember having a conversation with somebody actually about the knife a couple years ago that I asked Alan for, which was a Balisong, and he executed it amazingly, just like as.
Was that Chris?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. No. I saw that on Instagram or Alan's page or whatever. Yeah, of course.
And it was
he nails it as always.
Yeah. That was so fun. And I just remember like talking to somebody about that, and they were just like, yeah, but like how am I gonna do like aerials and like whatever with it? And I'm like I mean, here's the thing. Technically, you probably could. Honestly, I just don't
Right.
think that's the knife to do it with. Like,
Obviously.
that's it's more of a it's it's more of a collector's
Especially
piece.
Alan
It'll
making
work.
it by hand on a pantograph.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Well, also like the handles on that thing were just wild. I mean, they were tapered. I mean, but I was just like, yeah, man, like that's not the knife for you to flip. Like,
Right.
that's not what that's targeted. That's targeted towards a long
It's an
time
interesting
hardcore
market because
collector.
you get a mix of you get this. It really is a strange mix because you get. I can say this because when I started, we go back to the history of just what we talked about in this podcast. I started making knives for martial artists, and then that blossomed into law enforcement and military. So back in the great days of knife making for military, I got the tail end of that. So I was making. I had a cousin who was in 101st Airborne and deploying all the time, and I was selling knives to guys that were going overseas all the time. And you got this military type dudes, and then I had martial art type dudes, and then I sold all that, and the war started, slowing down, and they started drawing in the troops. And okay, market shifting. So it's just it's shifted from guys who are literally who would send me pictures of them carrying. These are the real old days. Fixed blades. They're sending pictures of them carrying the knives in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now I got kids going like, this knife doesn't slip when I play with it. And I'm in Orange County. You know what I mean? It's just like this whole transition of, and I'm not saying it's like, either one of them is bad or good.
Sure.
I'm just saying that the transition
is intense. Yep.
It's
I
intense.
get
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
when I was trying to do it too, I made a couple, and like the clientele was different, and the messages I got were different. I told Jeremiah, I'm like, I don't think I want to do this to deal with this customer base.
Yeah. I totally understand what you're saying, and I've talked about this with other, the aforementioned other knife makers who are friends of mine. So I'm not saying either one is bad or good, but if you go from guys like this to kids who are going like, how do I do aerials with this knife? You're like, all right, I understand there's a different need in this customer base.
It's right.
It's
not good or bad. It's just a different knife. It's like, right, there's knives for this and there's knives for this, and then it's, there's different knives. Like, I wanted to ask you because you had mentioned this earlier, and I thought I remembered the answer to it, but I wanted to confirm with myself and on the cast. The art on the shirt that I have from you with the ballet songs and a sort of skeleton-like creature, is that art from Ken, your friend? When you were saying artist earlier, I totally
that's a cool story actually. So the art, Ken, the original artist that I was talking about, who was my buddy, was instrumental in creating a couple of the blade shapes and the original design for my logo, the two B's. And then I modified it. But the artwork you're talking about is from a guy named Paul Pippin. His artist's name is Moz Chops, and he did a graphic novel that was serialized in Heavy Metal magazine, I think a couple of years ago. And he's a guy I've known since 2005. I met him in Cambodia. We really cool friendship. I was traveling the world and I met him in Cambodia, and we both realized that we wanted to expat and live in Southeast Asia, and we've been friends ever since. And he put out a graphic novel, really cool book that was it's hard to describe. It's about insects, honestly. And anyway, he did the artwork for me, and now he's doing he had a serialized piece in Heavy Metal, and then I convinced him to pay him a little bit of money, and he would do the artwork for that shirt. So.
That's awesome. And anybody that's in Heavy Metal is totally, yep, that's like...
No, he had a serialized thing. It was really cool. I mean, especially for a guy who just decided to move to Cambodia.
That's pretty gnarly. If I don't know if there's
He's a really brilliantly talented graphic artist, and now he works back. He had done a lot of 3D environments for video games and stuff before he decided he wanted to drop out of Western society.
Fuck it. Just it.
And we both kind of dropped out of Western society for a while. Then he had to come back, but geez, I mean, he's just like a really talented artist, and I've actually contacted him, tried to get him to do another T-shirt for me. He's like, "Oh shit, man, I'm too busy."
Oh, bummer. All right.
I can pay him a certain amount of money to do a T-shirt, but he's like, "No, I'm doing TV shows," and he's actually doing 3D environments for like really TV shows. I mean,
wow,
he's a really talented dude. Just a brilliant artist.
I will totally post when we put up the episode. I'll post a picture of the shirt because I don't know how much I've seen it on your Instagram, but it's beautifully visceral. It's a nice he's adjunct a really good piece of art to the knives. I dig it.
He did that logo for my T-shirt, and then luckily I got him to do the logo for my gym too.
Nice.
Before he went back to England, so he's an English guy, and he was like me. He was a little bit tired of Western life, and he wanted to move to Asia, and he moved over, and he went far deeper than I did. In meaning, he got a wife and he's got kids that are Cambodian and stuff, and he's a really neat guy. He's a really brilliant guy, and just a really good soul. Always, trying to do the right thing, and be an artist at the same time. It's crazy, and I wish him nothing but the best. He's a really cool dude, and luckily I could catch him in times when he needed money. Honestly,
right, there you go.
Hey, Paul, do me some artwork.
Do me something, dude.
Yeah. Give some money, do me the artwork. Now he's like, man, I don't even have time. I'm working full time. I'm trying to support my daughters and my wife and stuff like that. He lives back in I think it was Manchester. I can't remember where he lives now, but shit, great guy, really brilliant artist. I've been lucky to have been just met guys and friends who are really, really creative, just great artists. My first buddy Ken, who did some blade shapes, and he also did my logo, and then Paul, who did a little bit of artwork for me, either for my gym or for the brand there. I think I tried to get him to do another piece of art for me for 6 months ago, and he's like, "Oh shit, man, I'm really too busy."
Yeah, that image is it's very striking. It totally should be.
You know what's crazy is I didn't even dictate it. I just was like, "Hey, Paul." I didn't even know how to explain the Balisong market. I was like, "Look, this is my knife, and this is kind of what the market I'm shooting for. Just go crazy." And I don't know why I just came out with something.
Well, man, it works, man. It's great. It's a very, very, very cool piece of art to attach to a knife brand, and certainly, obviously, of someone who makes Balisongs. It's dope. So you're doing the Balisongs, you're doing the fixed blades. I see, and you're also making.
Yeah.
So you're in fixed blades. I really mean swords, short swords, and and somewhere in between, like not really EDC fixed blades, but in that sort of size category.
Yeah, I've got EDC. I kind of paused on the EDC fixed blades because Balisongs are going. That's what's going for us right now. So I've honestly I spent almost 6 months developing folders too, and I'm still kind of sitting on those.
I saw a little bit of tease of that in your Instagram.
Yeah, I teased a bit of it because and again, that's going through an organic market of my connections, meaning I started in the fixed blades it's exactly kind of the same group of guys that were buying the fixed blades. Obviously anybody who makes knives is trying to bust into folders, and I've again using martial arts tying into how I'm gonna sell some folders.
Yeah. So you have a whole batch of Balisongs that is. it will be dropping with the HQ pretty soon.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
within the
For
next
sure.
week or so.
Well, yeah, we're shipping them out this week, and then as soon as they get them online, they'll get them online.
Okay. Yeah, cataloging.
And that
processing.
includes inlay stuff and kind of standard model stuff. And then I'm kind of sitting on a lot of the high end crazy stuff, waiting for the next drop.
I think we've reached a good point for tonight.
For sure.
That being said, Brian, so we're looking for you at Blade Show 2021. Would be your first show of the season then.
Yeah, of that season.
Of the upcoming fingers crossed craziness.
Yeah.
You know,
exactly. Fingers crossed.
Hope to see that.
I'll
come
be in
back.
the same place, right in the back of the hall with all the Japanese guys.
Nice.
They have all the sake.
We'll have to. Okay. We'll have to. I know that once in a while you partake in a cigar. We'll have to all. All go down there and get the proper ring gauge and have a smoke at Blade Show, which would be cool because it's gonna be a double Blade Show, as we all missed out on this one. So it's gonna be a crazy one coming up. But it should be fun. I think it'll be good. I want to extend the gratitude of the podcast to you and say, hey, I thank you so much for coming on and talking with us tonight and talking to us about ballet songs and martial arts and apparently just going to Thailand because I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I guess I should just go to Thailand apparently. So
I'll go with you.
Yeah, fuck it. Let's just go to Thailand. Like, I don't.
Hey,
Okay, sure.
when you guys are ready to go, just if you can coordinate with me, I'm the best tour guide ever.
I will do that.
Fuck yeah.
Like exactly.
absolutely.
No,
Well,
I
hit
I have to
up
taken
reschedule
Thailand.
the Japan trip. I'll do both.
I've taken a lot of people over for the first time, and they really just follow me around.
That's awesome. All right, yeah, we'll fucking do it, man. That'd be a blast.
Yeah, that's home to me. So I read, write, and speak, and Jesus, we have so much fun when we go.
Fuck yeah.
And go to a bunch of fights, eat a bunch of great food, enjoy the laid back atmosphere. I actually planned my entire run of knives for an entire year in Thailand. That's my plan for the rest of my life.
Oh, all right. It's not a bad plan, actually.
No. Go over the first part of the year, sit with my computer and cat out all the everything that needs to be cut and made for the entire year, and everything that's made is already planned. Make it for a year, go back and do it again next year.
Bada boom. All right.
Boom. Exactly.
Well,
cheers, guys.
Shit, man, we're looking forward to it.
Sure. Looking forward to seeing you guys.
Yeah.
Maybe come out to Vegas and see you guys before then.
Absolutely right. Let's do it. I want to thank everybody so much for listening tonight. Another episode of the Bladeology podcast, episode 42. Stay tuned for more awesomeness. This has been the vocal representation of Jeremiah Burbank from PVK Vegas.
Nick Chuperin of NCC Knives.
And Brian Biegler of Biegler Bladeworks.
Killer. All right. Thanks, everybody.